So in Israel, we have a larger, even much larger outbreak than in the United States. We've had almost 4,000 cases this year since the beginning of the outbreak that began in 2018. And indeed, many of the patients are from Jerusalem, Bnei Brak, and other places where ultra-Orthodoxes live. But now, right now in Israel, it has spread to many other cities. So we're still not containing it, although we're trying hard to do that.
So both in Israel and in New York, Michigan, all of these states being affected by this outbreak, how concerned should people be, even if they are vaccinated against the virus?
So the vaccine is highly immunogenic. So if you had at least one dose of the vaccine, you have more than 93% of being vaccinated against the disease. And if you had 2 doses, you're doing much better. So all the people that had 2 doses of the vaccine should be quite calm, and they're not susceptible of receiving the disease. But the people that are not vaccinated should go, if they're entitled to receive a vaccine, they should go and get the vaccine. I mean, all the people that are 1 year of age and older should get the vaccine right now.
Well, let me ask you about that, Dr. Barkai, because...
It's very efficacious.
Yes, well, you say that, but we know there's been resistance against vaccinations, the so-called anti-vax movement in the U.S., which apparently has also taken root in elements of the ultra-Orthodox community. How far should public health authorities go? I mean, mandatory vaccination, is that perhaps a step that needs to be taken here?
Yeah, well, I know the Ministry of Health does the most that it can to reach out to these populations that are less vaccinated. But in Israel, they're not yet enforcing the vaccine like in the U.S. They're not making... we're not entitled to put fines on people and not let them go to public places as you do in the United States. We're still considering it in Israel.
So on that note, since that's not an option, given that there are substantial communities in Israel and across the United States that are choosing not to vaccinate their kids, what would you tell those parents who say they prefer not to get this vaccine?
Of course, they're endangering their old children very much, but they're endangering the whole population because, as you know, measles is one of the most contagious diseases on earth. So people can get the disease even if they're in the same room 2 hours after the person who was infected left the room. So it's very, very contagious. So the public threat is very big.
I want to ask you...
They should go and vaccinate, of course.
I want to ask you, because, again, we're talking about the disease reportedly perhaps having spread from Israel to the U.S. What about situations like flights from Israel, areas which are contained, the airports? Does some kind of screening perhaps have to take place if the situation gets even worse?
I mean, as you know, this outbreak started not in Israel. It started in Europe, mainly in Ukraine. Many thousands of people have been sick in the Ukraine from the measles. So it's not only in Israel. And people now with the global world can spread it everywhere. In flights, of course, is a big concern. The problem with measles is that before the rash appears, you cannot diagnose this very well because it's just like an other upper respiratory disease. It's just fever, conjunctivitis, rhinorrhea, running nose, etc. So it's very hard to diagnose at the time. Of course, people who have fever and rash should not go on flights, but it's really, really hard to contain that.
So at what point is this going to be considered a full-blown epidemic? What is the threshold?
Excuse me, I didn't hear you very well.
Yeah, at what point?
So I think it's a full-blown epidemic in Israel. It's a full-blown epidemic, and measures are taken in the state, and people are informed, and of course hospitals are well informed, and the community is informed. And we're doing a lot of, we're putting a lot of energy into vaccinated people that didn't go get vaccines. but I don't think it's in this phase. The airports should be alarmed. They should be alarmed, but we're not preventing people from flight unless they have specific symptoms of measles.
Dr. Barkai, you work in the pediatrics. Have you yourself encountered parents who have refused, not just ultra-Orthodox Jews, who have refused to give vaccinations because of this belief that it causes autism or perhaps other maladies?
Yes, of course. I have met people that refuse to get vaccines because the fears of autism, although it has been rejected long time ago. I must say that during this outbreak, most people that were hospitalized in my hospital were not people, children of people who really were against vaccines, but, you know, just were reluctant to do it, forgot to do it. The child was ill and they arrived later. So most of the kids I have encountered this time are not anti-vaccine patients.
All right, Dr. Galia Barkai.